Yeah, I know there's no audio. I have no way to render audio with the sharing screen function on Hangouts, and with my these headphones and mic being plugged in, I can't pick up the audio from my speakers. So, but the audio should work, better work. But welcome everyone to Ramblings of the Chaotic Mind. Today we're going to discuss the decay of morals and morality in society. Hello, Cesar Nikolai. We're going to try to keep this under an hour. Probably not going to interact much in chat today. But before we get started, I do want to draw everybody's attention to over here. For those that hasn't subscribed yet, please check out Pirate Radio Podcasts. Tonight will be, since it's Tuesday, will be World Pirate Radio News, show segment 17. I will be joining Jaffe Ryder as a co-host, filling in for Kaiser while he is abroad. We've got some interesting topics on store for tonight, so stop on by and check it out. It'll be at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. It's an hour show. I think you guys will thoroughly enjoy. Also, every Friday night, except for the fifth week of on the months that have 5 weeks in them, we'll have Pirate Radio will have special guests. So it's definitely something to check out. You can also find them on their WordPress site at wprpn.com. Watch the live stream here as well, and upcoming shows details. And also, like, not to forget, but for those that haven't checked it out yet, also check out worldly.com. It is a up and coming social site that's going to protect our free speech. They've got a lot of things up and coming, new features coming, and it is a nice place to start to get to know and interact with people. Share your opinions and views, give feedback to the creator and founder of Worldly, Christina Taft, for things that you'd like to see on this site. She takes everyone's feedback and listens, and is trying to build the best social platform that will work for all of us. And from talks that we've had, they've got some really cool stuff coming here in the next 6-7 months to year. They're also going to be working on getting us so we can be able to live stream as well from here, but that's down the road a ways, as fundings, they build as they get the funding. So definitely something to check out. And I'm really happy to watch this site grow. Now on to our show. What is right and what is wrong? It seems to depend on the state of left and right, but yet in itself a facsimile, one of which is void of moral society. As the younger generations rise and the older generations depart, so seems have all the virtues and morals that it's supposed to be passed from one generation to the next. We're living in a day and age where everything's digital, everything's viral, where most people have lost concepts of reality, can't unplug and get away and actually decompress. We're living in a day of age where parents are now, instead of claiming, putting on their children's birth certificate, male or female, they're doing putting gender free or gender neutral. You know, we live in a day and age where the LGBT community is now defending pedophilia. We're seeing how Hollywood celebrities talk about it like it's okay. Then when they get criticized or pointed out, the people that are pointing out, calling them out, are the ones that are getting blamed. Where in any society is pedophilia right? Where is in any society being with a minor okay? But yet we see transgender being taught inside our school system at the early ages of 8, 9, as young as 7. But yet this seems to be okay. We have people that are so easily offended and triggered now that if you say the wrong thing or talk about transgenderism or pedogate or talk about left and right paradigms, you become a villain. You become far worse than the pedophiles that should be rounded up and sentenced to life in prison. Where have we gone wrong? Since when is it wrong to call out wrongs? But yet the wrongs seem to be rights now, and rights are wrong. There's completely a debauchery in society's thinking. You know, many people warned about the transgender movement from when it first started, that this was just opening the door to more pedophilia. And they were right. It is. It's programming and teaching our children that sex is a role playing game that's meant for more of a fetish culture. But they're bringing that fetish culture right to our children, and that's wrong. You know, what adults do in the bedroom's their own business. The fact that you're being stripped of your personal identity, but yet nobody seems to have an issue with that. You're being taught it's okay to live in a fantasy world, that the fantasy world is reality. Well, I'm here to tell you there's no such thing. Fantasy is fantasy, and it'll always be fantasy. Those that choose to live and hide within the fantasy realm is just living in a false reality and can't cope with everyday life. And most psychologists would say you have a mental disorder. And in fact, you do. Because you can't cope with reality. You can't cope with the fact that you are a male by your DNA. You are a female by your DNA. You know, we go on Twitter, we see people, these Hollywood celebrities posting tweets that are just downright sickening. But yet we go talking about certain subjects, this very subject in particular, we become censored, shadow banned, deemed unsafe, threatened to be put on a list because we're trying to expose the truth, expose the fact that you guys are people out there being so manipulated. We've got people in politics that scream, you got to be left, you got to be right. You can only vote one way, further dividing us. We have politicians that are screaming for censorship on the internet, saying these channels need to be taken down. Why aren't you doing this? Why are you still allowing InfoWars to be have a page on Facebook. Oh, I know, I said Infowars, Alex Jones. Yes, can't stand the man, but tell you what, his very freedom of speech is being attacked. Guess what? We're next. That's the point. We keep allowing ourselves to be pitted against each other. We keep allowing ourselves to be manipulated, strings pulled. Oh, that person's, I don't like that person, so who cares? Well, you better start caring because it's happening. Let me tell you something. Since we're going to keep this all the way raw and uncut, if they ever get these three big platforms to adhere to those policies, there will be no place on the internet you can go. Let me give you a little history lesson. Everybody remembers when radio came about. Well, maybe not. I mean, it was even before my time, but I remember, the likes of Howard Stern, how the FCC was always on him, saying, "No, you can't say these things on air. You can't say these things on network. You can't say these 7 words." That's what's coming to the digital age. That's what's coming in the form of censorship. If you have an opinion and a view that goes against the status quo, we'll put you on a list. We'll fine you. We'll take down your channels. We'll make it so you can't go anywhere. And, we have these upcoming sites, like I just mentioned, with worldly.com, The Minds, Gab, and all these other Stream It, DTube, DLive. We think those are alternate resources, or WordPress with WPR, or Pirate Radio Pirate Radio World Pirate Radio Podcast Network. It's a WordPress. It's on a WordPress site, much like Sons and Daughters of Liberty and KOTR are on WordPress sites. But we've seen how that goes. Once the big three fall in compliance and fall in line, all these advertisers that sponsor these hosting providers that give them money are going to try to control. They're going to lock down the internet so it becomes anybody that tries to do it will be doing it through piracy, much like pirate radio in the 80s and 90s, or the pirate hamcast operators who don't have a license but yet operate their hams. That's what we're facing. Because they don't want people like us coming on here talking about issues like transgender, pedophilia. Education systems, broken systems, questioning our congressmen when they step out of line, when they start infringing on the very oaths that they've taken to uphold and protect our Constitution, when they try to strip our freedom of speech, when we start calling them out. We've seen cases where in Maryland they tried to pass laws where if we talk about even theoretically about politics, we could be fined and put in jail. There's so many hot button issues that we can't keep up with them all. Because there's always something going on. So many important issues that are getting swept under the rug because something else keeps coming up. Well, you know what? For the next few weeks, months, I'm done with sweeping things under the rug. I know you guys heard me talk about there's a time and place for everything. Well, I'm going to take that time and place and I'm going to start talking about these issues, including the issue of Islam here in the United States, the very thing that's being swept under the rug that people aren't talking about. I'm going to start hammering these issues because they are important. It's important to bring awareness to them while we still can. Just last week. Speaking of which, let me bring my Hangouts up just in case I get froze up. Just like last week, I tried to do a video, a live stream. I tried to talk about transgenderism and MGM Resorts suing the victims. Well, apparently I couldn't get a live stream off talking about that. I couldn't even get an upload on it, so I put it over in D Live. No issues, not a problem. I also put another separate podcast that I knew would catch flack and get censored and catch a strike here between me and a friend in a new Uber conference call that we did a pod kind of did a show together discussing a few things, the RNC venue convention at Charlotte. We talked about other subjects. And some of the subjects we got into bordered on racism because some words that were used, I would get censored here and catch a community strike. So I did not put it up here. See, we're being forced to put our content on a place where I have 0 followers. I can't share and embed the link from DLive. All it does when I share it, it gives the DLive little advertisement, doesn't show the thumbnail, doesn't show what the podcast is about, so most people are going to overlook it. So is DLive the answer? Not really, because it's utterly, for my purposes, useless. So I innovated a bit more. I want to give special thanks to Jaffe Ryder for allowing me to take part in Pirate Radio podcast and fill in temporarily because I've been learning a lot of stuff from them. I've been learning different sites like archive.org, another useful tool to put my content up, where I can actually grab an embed link. Started using Patreon's audio because most all my videos have an audio format. Since I couldn't get a link for the DLive video, I put it up as an audio podcast. These are our tools, but how long will we have those tools? We already know and seen what Patreon has done to people that start going against the status quo, that start becoming, as they deem, advertiser unfriendly, because they're talking about subjects that could be harmful to their sites and platforms, because they don't want to catch the ire of Congress. So where can we talk about these things? Well, I tried to put together a magazine on a platform that I know don't censor. But yet, most people have gotten away from reading articles. Not really. It did well, the only issue that was up. But I made it a point that I'm not going to do it by myself either. Plenty of people said, yay, they contribute, but it's summer. Bad timing on my part. So we'll try again in the fall. These very core issues that we're dealing with right now, what this show is going to be about for the next 40 minutes, give or take, are the issues that are dividing us, that are been used to manipulate us. We need to get some facts straight to all you so-called leftist and rightist. Quit being brainwashed. Quit being idiots. You don't vote the same damn people in as trying to take your very rights away because you're only going to vote one way. You're supposed to be voting people in that are going to uphold the Constitution. That's going to be your voice, not a damn color party line. You need to get that through your heads quickly. Our founders, when they created this country, there wasn't no Democrat or Republican. It was patriots. Those labels came into place to further divide. We've got colorful titles back then, such as Federalist, Loyalist, the Federalist movements. There's gonna, I'm hoping we get to talk about this on pirate radio tonight as well. There's a couple articles that are on some of our talking points for tonight. It's an hour show, so sometimes we don't get to all the talking points, but there was a talking point about who we pay our taxes to. That we're not really paying, we're still paying our taxes to the king and queen. Think about that for a minute. You know, I've been quite open about I come from a founding father that signed the Declaration of Independence. I've also been upfront that he opposed a certain treaty, which was the Jay Treaty, because foresaw what it would lead to. Then long come about. The next thing we know, we have the Paris Treaty Accord, which is where all things ended, but it started with the Jay Treaty. Because the Jay Treaty was going to be just that, surrendering our funds, our cash, paying for a war that was supposed to meant to our freedom, which they've eventually in the was it 1890, 1889? I can't remember the exact date of that. Let me see if I can't find it. I'm going to stop sharing for a bit, guys. You guys can look at my ugly mug for a little bit. The 1783 treaty. Just wanted to make sure I got my dates right. Pirate Radio is at 11 o'clock Eastern. This is one of the subjects we're going to talk about. We know our history, taxation without representation and stuff, but yet we're still being taxed, paying an illegal tax, by the way, because we allow these politicians, we allow ourselves to get caught up in voting on a basis that it has to be Democrat, Republican, and it needs to be an independent or a libertarian, liberal or conservative, instead of voting for the person that's going to set up there and honor our Constitution, that's going to fight to protect it, that's going to be your voice. That's who we're supposed to vote in. We're never supposed to vote by party lines. Look where this party line crap has got us. Look where this left and right paradigm has got us. It's got us into a state of utter chaos, utter division. People can't agree on anything. It's got Common Core put in our very education system that's teaching transgenderism to 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. It's even teaching people that I was born in, because I'm 18 years old, because I was born in 2010 and it's 2018. So therefore, I'm 18. With somebody quoting, it's simple math. Why don't you get it? Wow. If that's what's being taught to our children, maybe everybody out there needs to pull their kids out of the school systems. Seriously. But yet, let's look at the broader picture of that, since we're talking about transgenderism, pedophilia as well. We've got states that's trying to lower the age of consent. With mathematical logic like that, they're saying an 8-year-old's 18, so it's okay. I'm 40, Caesar. I mean, that's the logic of it. Where have our morals gone? Where have our values gone? Since when, in any right state of mind, is it okay for any type of this stuff to be taught to the innocents, the children? Since when is it okay to have Hollywood celebrities talking about this, tweeting about it like it's funny? Since when is it okay to tell the police departments to stand down when their job is to serve and protect? That's how bad our system has got, all because of a political agenda. Last year, I brought you reports of terrorist activities and terrorism that was happening here in the U.S. that was sealed because the previous it went against the previous administration's status quo. We found cases where people were convicted. But no, we don't have an issue with that here in the United States. Anytime anybody pointed it out, they took a risk and pointed it out because it went against the status quo. It goes against the narrative. Well, the only narrative I see we have a bunch of politicians that sold this country out, that sold our values out, our morals out. And I see people that's just turning a blind eye to it. Like, oh, they're just corrupt, nothing we can do about it. Then come election time, they'll only vote one way and not even listen to anybody else but one side. When, who knows, maybe that up and comer just happens to be in the opposite side. That's all about protecting the Constitution. You cannot vote based on a political agenda or a side. That very same logic is the same logic we see. Well, it's okay to be a kitten. It's okay to be a dog. It's okay to be a unicorn. It's okay for little girls to say they're men. And at the very age of 13 to be able to start testosterone therapy and hormonal therapy. It's okay for them to go ahead and have surgeries done without parental consent. But yet, if you go in and tell your doctor, I want to remove my limb because I want to be an amputee, you have a medical disorder. You have a psychological disorder. But it's okay to remove other parts that that define your sexuality. There's not a mental disorder there. You know, I've heard the claim that pedophilia is a mental disorder. You know what? I don't care. It's a crime. It's a choice. It's sick, it's perverted, and it has no place in any society. And it needs to be upheld like that, not treated as a mental disorder, so they can get a slap on the wrist. Pedophilia is no different than rape. It's no different than abuse and sex trafficking. Because you're damaging a mind that's not even developed yet. The human brain isn't fully developed until the age of 25. So technically, you're not fully an adult to the age of 25. Well, that's cool, Caesar. But yet, we live in this crazy world where we've got politicians, celebrities, because they're filthy rich, they think they're above the law. Then we get this double standard. We see Hollywood celebrities saying things that if the normal people would say it, they'd find themselves sitting behind a desk in a room somewhere that they don't even know, being interrogated by the Secret Service and the FBI and the CIA. Let's keep it all the way real. When it should be these very same people, you want to set an example. You bring these people in. If they post tweets about pedophilia, treat them like they're a criminal and do an open investigation on them. Don't punish those that point it out. Just like the Disney firing the one guy. I can't remember his name. Don't even want to know his name anymore. Just another sick, perverted sicko that should be in prison. But yet we have people out there trying to defend him. Oh, you had no right firing him. You have no. He did nothing wrong. But then again, we must ask, where do we draw the line between free speech, comedy, opinions, and views? I think there's a moral line that we don't cross. And that's a lot of the problem. You know, most of our morals are passed down from generation to generation, from family to family. But yet, we live in a time of age where, even when I was growing up, we were taught to put work, education first. Get those degrees, get that education. Then get settled in. So next thing you know, you're 30, 35, mid 30s before you start settling in and maybe having kids. What's up, reality check 1, 2, 3? So now the grandparents may not be there, which I know from my growing up, a lot of my values and morals came from my grandparents. You know, being with them while my parents are at work, learning from what they learned when they were growing up, their experience, their wisdom, the idea of rights and wrongs in a society that seems to can no longer discern what is right or wrong. That's some of the problem. A lot of the younger generation didn't have the grandparents in their life, because my generation and the generations after waited too long. No, I haven't reality checked. Waited too long to have our children. I mean, I have no children. But, some of that was my own choices. Some of that is I enjoyed the bachelor life for way too long. But when I was growing up, that was okay. That's kind of how we were taught. Have fun, enjoy. That Now that I'm older, I see the folly in that line of thought. I see where it's led us to this point. Now we come across. Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about. I've done some research into that. That's kind of been the key points of my doing the broken system, which I'm going to still keep doing it. Probably try to fit it in next week. But all these systems, have been designed to do the very things we see are unfolding. But yet these systems were set in place decades ago, 30, 40 years, some 100 years ago, and they're starting to just now to unfold while we while new ones are being set. Why is it so important to be stripping the identity from people, their personal identity? Does anybody know? Why is it so important to strip that from each of you? You have your own identity. You are who you are. But yet they want to strip that very concept, clear down to telling you it's okay to change your sex. And you can be that sex, but yet you can't because you can't reproduce. hmm I fully agree. Reality check 1, 2, 3. That has been the common thing because they didn't like the concept of the white picket fence 50s type households. And we can go farther back, that bond where family was strong and united, where families made up the communities. They wanted to destroy that. They needed to destroy that because of the key word there, unity. If these families are unified, we've seen it. We've seen it throughout every war that's taken place here in the United States. Revolutionary War, Civil Wars. We've seen the power of unity and family. They had to divide that, break that down. Right. And it goes same with the agenda, demasculizing males and defeminizing females. We got into that culture movement where we were pushing for equality for everything. Yes, Gen X kind of screwed up it a bit. I agree there, but so has every generation. It goes well beyond Generation X. It goes clear down to the 60s, hippie movements, flower childs and stuff. That's where it kind of really sprung forth and took hold. Each step, each progress we've seen with that structure, we've seen the tactic, how they learned from that generation. Okay, they became too open-minded. They became questioning everything. So now we need to do it this way so they no longer question things. Well, yeah, the parenting principle, and it does. I've stated this in previous podcasts. We all want change. Guess what? It's not going to be a big movement. That's not where change starts. Change starts right in the home. Starts right with you taking a look in the mirror. You got to be willing to change yourself before others. Then it has to start in the home. All this idea of we need big grassroots movements, they're pointless if that change doesn't take place in the home. From the home, it goes to the community that's around you. Everybody wants to jump and skip all the steps because that's what we're taught to do. Yeah, the people should be very scared because when we're talking about everything we covered thus far, we're talking about the future congressmen, the future leaders of this country. the future voters, and they're being taught that it's okay to censor. It's okay to try to take everybody's rights to bear arms. They're being taught that if somebody offends you, they need to be punished. They need to be removed. They need to be censored, deleted. Instead of realizing why did they get triggered? Why did they get so offended? Well, the reality of it is the truth hurts. Go take a look in the damn mirror. Something that somebody said made you question something. No, I seen you post something about that. I haven't got to it yet because I've been working on getting this show set up and getting ready for tonight's show on Pirate Radio podcast that I'll be helping co-host. I am going to look into that because that will make a nice talking point tonight. But yet, I got to look at California with their strict gun laws and look at my own state here in Ohio. You know, we passed here in Ohio, they passed medical marijuana, but yet if you get a medical marijuana card, you're forfeiting your Second Amendment rights. Just yet another tool to take something that is yours by birthright. Well, no, not in California. They're not. The most your gun can have in California is 10. If it has any more than 10, it's done. Yes, I do too. Well, here's the catch. B. Rich pointed this out in a podcast last week, I believe, talked about this. How California also created a new registry. Well, the very last day to register, the website crashed. So thousands of people weren't able to register. Now, thousands of people are now in violation of the law and can be tried and charged for possessing a firearm that is not registered. That'll be interesting. I'm going to have to look that up and research that. But I do agree with you. If they're doing that, there's a reason. Because the other thing that happened in California today was this California Supreme Court denied the petition to separate into three different states. So yeah, I do agree. Something's fishy about that, especially as strict as gun laws they have, and not to mention all the pandemonium chaos that's going on in California. I was talking to a friend of mine that used to live there and is getting ready to move back to, not to California, but up around the Washington, Oregon area. But she still has a son there, and it's bad. No, but it's bad because it's an environment where it's ideal for something to happen, and they use that as this is use that as a political agenda to come after the Second Amendment. Oh yeah, I know. I've also seen what happened on on the train system the other day. How it kind of escalated a bit into semi-riots yesterday. It's like these things. When we hear about things like what Reality Check 123 brought up about California passing open carry laws, we have to question why. Well, we should never have to question a reason why, because it should be everybody's right to open carry, to have and possess a firearm if they so choose. But yet, when they pass these laws, now we have to look farther. What's the catch? What's the gimmick? What are they trying to pull? Just like with this transgender stuff, why are they pushing it so much when I'm not a Christian, but I was brought up in the Christianity, Southern Baptist, preacher's son, also a little bit of Catholicism. I got away from that path and system, but that's what, if you ask any American, to this day, they'll tell you, yeah, Christianity is the basic morals of the side. Where's all these Christians at? They should be in an uproar over the transgender movement, because that just defies humanity. It defiles the concept of being male and female. It defiles the concept that we were created in God's own image. I'll be the first to tell you that good book has some great morals and values in it. I just don't agree with all the dogma, all the rhetoric that tells you, oh, this person's evil because he don't follow our belief. That was kind of the problem or people have. They can't separate that concept when it comes to our Constitution, where everybody has a right to believe in what they choose, where everyone has a right to be equal and treated fairly and justly. When it goes against your belief and opinions and views, it's no longer okay. We all scream for social platforms and free speech, but yet as soon as they come across somebody that has a different belief, it's no longer okay for that different belief to have that opinion on that website. It doesn't work that way. They have every much right as you do. You have the right and responsibility to not view it, to ignore it, block the person. I mean, that's going to be for another topic, but I mean, religion has very much played a part in all this as anything, because it's helped divide us. We're divided based on our religious beliefs and preferences. I grew up hearing that crap preached from the pulpit, and that's what it was. It was crap. And to me, even when I was saved, I seen it. It made me mad when I hear the preachers preach that, because it goes against what the New Testament stood for. Love thy neighbor. Do not judge. But yet, we're so judgmental. Some would say, well, you're being a hypocrite because you're judging transgenderism. Yes, I am. I'm judging the fact that I can respect it if you're an adult. I have no respect for it when you're teaching it to children, when you're using it to strip a person's identity and teaching them that it's okay to live in a fantasy world. Reality check. That's why you get so offended and triggered, because you're living in a fantasy world. Grow up. Face the facts that you've been deceived, tricked, and lied to. To some of you people out there, you're so young having this stuff done, these operations done. What if your views and opinions change 10 years from now? 20 years from now? Let me give you a good example. Those don't come off. That's permanent. That's something, if I didn't want 10 years from when I got it done, almost 20 now, I got to live with for the rest of my life. I had to make sure when I put the ink in my skin, that is something I could live with for the rest of my life, including the ones that are on my chest that no one gets to see. They're very much a part of me and will always be a part of me. But yeah, I know we can have them laser removed. But yet, can the common person afford that? And I put it on my skin for a reason, not to take it off. It comes with responsibility. It comes with understanding the reason why I never went below my elbows, because I still want to be able to look representable in a short sleeve shirt. Now, just be respectful. Right. There is some irony there, but yet we see people that pushed it so far as tattooing their whole faces. Well, now, if you got facial tattoos, you might be labeled as an MS-13 gang member. But yet, back in my time, well, it wasn't really my generation that did it. It was the next couple generations. It was okay to do that. No one thought of the consequences. For every decision, every choice we make, there's a consequence. It's not always going to be good. I hear people talk about karma. Karma has nothing to do with it. It's all cause and effect. Everything you do has a reaction. And that reaction, you can put as much good as in the bank. Maybe just like letting that person in front of you in line, or as you're going up to the light, let that car in front of you and you get caught at the red light, or you get caught while waiting in line to pay for your stuff, that the cashier's going on break and the line closes. It happens. Does it mean it was wrong to let that person in front of you? No. That's just being a good person. That's what we should be doing. Now, not having the mindset of doing things because we're going to get rewarded for it. No, we don't get rewarded for the things we do. We get the experience from doing them. We get the wisdom and knowledge of those things. Each of us have to decide what we feel is right and wrong. We got to clearly define right and wrong. We got to clearly start defining and bringing back morals, showing people that it's not okay for anybody the under age 18 to be taken advantage of, manipulated. It's not okay for 7, 9, 8-year-olds to be taught transgenderism. In fact, that shouldn't be taught in the school systems at all. That is something that they shouldn't have to experience or even think about until they're 18. We got a lot of things that we need to fix. But unfortunately, a lot of these fixes are going to have to start right in our own homes. Parents need to start parenting again. Parents need to start taking back control. No, it's not a new concept at all. I mean, we can go clear back to the 60s. How open and free it was then. Sexualization is everywhere, including into ask anybody that's ever did business and marketing and advertising. What's the number one seller? Sex and violence. Sex sells. Always has, always will. You know, just like the concept of everybody wanted to get up, bash Trump for meeting with Putin. You know, my philosophy and theory on this is it's not even a theory, it's quite sound philosophy. Peace is better than war any time of the day. We don't have to agree with our politics, but if we can get along with no threat of war between two nations, we should be striving for peace every time. You know, Trump's done something that most presidents, well, have never done. Be able to sit down with two of our most, two of our biggest adversaries and formulate some peace. Will that peace hold? Probably not. New administration will come along and destroy what has taken place. And, you know, we always got to question, well, maybe that's the game they're playing because we got somebody's now is not scared to use our military might. So we'll play nice for now until the next administration comes in. Then we can go back to business as usual. It's always a possibility. Reality check, you know, you're probably right. I've already played devil's advocate on that one because, you know, if I was an elitist global leader, yeah, Trump would have been my man. Why? Look what he caused. But at the same point, I understand the theory of chaos. I understand that maybe they bit off more than they can chew. See, you can't totally control chaos. You can't totally control somebody that's just unpredictable. Here's another way to think about it. Reality check. Behind every myth and legend, there is some truth. Behind every conspiracy theory, there is a little bit of truth. Do I trust Trump? Oh, hell no. And I've called him out a couple times when he's opened his mouth and said stupid things like take away due process. We can never lower our guards. We always have to be vigilant, no matter who's in office, because they do take an oath. And when they violate that oath, it's our job to be vigilant and call them out on it. Our job's not to get caught in between the division and start separating ourselves and stop questioning things. Our job is not to pick a side, left or right, because left or right doesn't represent our Constitution. We've got rhinos sitting in, Republicans sitting in Congress that's tried to strip us of our constitutional rights. We have Democrats that have done the same. There's no party that's right. Our job's to find the right people that's going to uphold that oath of office that they take. Same way when it comes to electing judges, it's our job to put the ones that aren't going to put political bias in front of their oaths. I don't even consider an awakening, really a big awakening movement happening right now. When you sit back, watch, and observe, you still see that most of us can't get along with it. And very own people, supposedly in our communities, there's still that division. As much as I don't like Alex Jones, I've seen what Facebook's been doing to him here the past 2 weeks. Every time his video goes live, it'll pop up saying he's live. Then when you click on your little bell to open your notifications, it's not there. I sat there and watched 3 hours of that Judiciary Committee. I heard what they said, that people like Alex Jones, and when they refer to people like Alex Jones, they're referring to me, you, the viewer. Those that go against the status quo need their pages removed. They need censored. I mean, why would I mean, we heard what a few senators said about 9/11. If the American people seen what we saw, they'd be up in arms. But we're never going to see that. It's just like today. Rand Paul. That's why I never liked this man. Oh, I mean, I think he's a CIA plant. What Alex Jones we're referring to there, guys, not Rand Paul. But here's how bad Rand Paul is. Trump talks about passing a stimulus for the farmers. Multi-million-dollar stimulus package for the farmers. What's Rand Paul have to say about it? I'm going to actually read his tweet. Actually, I'm just going to pull this. I saved that tweet because I was going to talk about this tonight on Pirate Radio. Give me 1 second as I pull this up. Tariffs are taxes that punish American consumers and producers. If tariffs punish farmers, the answer is not welfare for farmers. The answer is remove the tariffs. That was Rand Paul's response. But yet, if we don't punish these countries that are abusing these tariffs, that are reason why half our market from the 90s to up till present day have shipped overseas, because there's the corporation can make more money by moving their company overseas and making the product. We have an unfair business deal that hurts the American people. Pirate Radio is at 11 o'clock Eastern time. So Rand Paul is completely wrong on his statement. We've been being hurt since 1996. Or no, when was the NAFTA treaty signed by the Clintons? Ever since then, I live in an area where I've watched almost every factory move to another country, to Mexico, with Ohio art that's been here since 1912. You know, Mattel Etch-a-Sketch, ship out to Taiwan because they can make more money and have less regulations and restrictions on what the product they make. So yes, we need to tough change the playing field when we got China that uses and abuses the system, that doesn't want to trade fairly with everybody. Who's that hurt, Mr. Rand Paul? That's hurting the American everyday working person. When their factories get shipped overseas, Amy, the people's perspective, nice seeing you in chat. If two countries worked together behind scenes and started a trade war and ended up putting tariffs on both sides, end result is a large extractions of wealth by government from both populations. That's a pretty good theory there. Except for over the years, we're the ones being screwed. Just like when Trump went to Canada and this last trip around, we had the Canadian Prime Minister and uh, Britain's Prime Minister talking about how dare you put America first? You're not putting the G6 or the G7 first. Well, screw you. This is our country. We should come first. Nowhere should we give up our sovereignty or bow down to any other nation. But yet we have members in Congress that sold out to the Crown, sold out to the UN, NATO, and getting fat off these very same things. How many members of our Congress own some of these businesses that went overseas? How many of these oil tycoons do we still have in Congress making millions and millions of dollars off the fluctuation of prices of oil? You know, if the president's got to give up his financials, maybe it's time we make our congressmen give up their financials. How many of our congressmen and women are affiliated with the pharmaceutical companies and making millions off the addictive pharmaceutical products? You know, the farmers, yes, they're going to be hurting for a little bit under with these tariffs. But you know what? Here's something that some of these farmers actually know. I'm sure Rob can testify to this. He's a farmer. We spend the world gets most of their products, most of their agriculture. China gets most of its water from where? That's right, the United States. Making money off the prison workers too. Oh, you don't want to get me started on that topic. Prison system is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. It's designed to keep people in. It's making money just not off the prisoners. It's making money off pharma, advertisers, and making states millions and billions of dollars in revenues because the state gets paid for each person that goes through the door and receives a number. I've heard of something about that, Rebecca Bradley. Uh, yes, Montecito does still exist. It exists under Bear. You see, sometimes we get caught up and fail to remember what the great Bill Gates did when they came after him for having a monopoly. I'll just subsidize. I'll just create separate corporations underneath it, and there'll be a corporation of itself, a separate entity. But yet he still owns it, so therefore he still owns the monopoly. Montecito did the same thing with Bear. That's another broken system. And guys, you know, as we get topics about this, you know, especially starts pissing people off when we start getting the pro-life choice. And I finally heard somebody say something that made scary sense. It actually kind of made my change my opinion about it. Not much, but it's about choice. The woman's right to choose. If we strip that away and we reversed Roe v. versus Wade, and we strip that choice away, we're actually stripping our First Amendment right away. The freedom of choice. I never thought I'd ever say that. But after somebody said that and I thought about it, they are actually right. Well, I mean, look at cocaine. Cocaine was used in Coke for what? To the 70s? You bought a bottle of Coke, you actually had cocaine in the Coke. Yes, all these broken systems affect the people, and it's meant to. It's meant to either get them addicted or get them reliant on a system till it purposely collapses, and now the people are don't know what to do because they need the system or they got so used to the system of having. I mean, we've seen what the welfare system has done to people. We've seen how it was been abused and used to where we've seen multimillionaires filing for welfare when they shouldn't ever be filing for welfare. Methadone clinics, right. But a lot of that started with no, the people don't have no advocates, especially in this day and age where those that advocate about it find themselves being censored, labeled unsafe for this site, put on a list, labeled. You talk about senator from Ohio last year tried to talk about the opium epidemic here in the United States. You know what happened to him? He got suspended. An Ohio State senator suspended for talking about the opioid epidemic that's happening in this very state. Just like that doctor that got ran out of the Cleveland Clinic for talking about vaccines. Yeah, I actually remember that. I was young, but I remember that. And what how many people fail to realize that even back in the 80s and early 90s, it was our very own alphabet gangs that were pushing the supply and demand of cocaine, heroin into the gangs, into the streets. They created the war on drugs to make money off it. The war on drugs was never a war on drugs, it was about making money. Yeah, I remember in the 90s, heroin, man, you got caught with that, you were done. You were doing a life sentence somewhere. And it used to be so expensive. Along came the the opiates, or oxycodone is where it started. Oxycontin, then codeine. People started getting addicted to that. It was known as the poor man's heroin. Now, heroin is cheaper than the pill. It's cheaper than a bag of weed. And pretty much, well, not being talked about. But yet it's coming back more heavily than ever, which is actually something else I think we're going to be covering tonight on Pirate Radio podcast at 11 Eastern Time. We're going to talk about the cannabis and the opium convention. I remember I went up to Benton Harbor up in Michigan. Man, there was a crack house in almost every two houses. People out in the streets just freely slinging dope like it wasn't nothing. They created the problem. Our very own alphabet gangs created the problem. You know, it's where I also have issues with the use of narcs, how they'll allow the narcs to take products in, sell vast quantity of products that ends up on the streets, not back into police custody where it's supposed to be, but they put it back out in the streets in the guise of catching a bigger fish. When in all actuality, that's not what they're trying to do. They could care less about the bigger fish. Yeah, I've always questioned that narrative there, me, the people's perspective, especially when with dealing with the real Rick Ross over the fake rapper Rick Ross, because he got dealt pretty a bad hand. For anybody that's actually did the research on Rick Ross, the real Rick Ross. I mean, I think they fear that man more than anything. Things that he knows, entrapment, which is here in my lovely state legal, when it shouldn't be legal. No form of entrapment should ever be legal, because truthfully, if they're allowed to entrap, they're taking your due process away. They're taking your rights away. They're creating a situation that you may not even realize. Even if you say no or attempt to walk away, you might get caught up and rounded up. Yep, the good old Arkansas Mafia group. Whose body count is too high to count. Oh, wait, we talk about that, we'll get censored. Or we talk about that and try to investigate that, we might become another statistic. But yet nobody wants to talk about of all the attorney generals that have come up mysteriously dead. Oh, guy was working out in the gym. The barbell came down on his throat, crushed his trachea. Weird surfing accident. I can't remember what the last one was. Just a month ago that came up dead. Or a reporter that car bombing. You know, well, I guess nobody really wants us to be talking about Uranium One either, right? You see, this is the danger that we're facing with this digital age, with this censorship that our very Congress people, and this is Republican and Democrat, are pushing. All you got to do is go back, watch the last Judicial Committee. with Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. It wasn't just Republican or Democrats on one side; they were all at it. Even the Republican agreed Alex Jones needs to have his page removed. It's funny, and that's why I don't like Alex Jones. That's why I don't trust him. That's why I will flat out say he's a CIA plant, because he's so much easy to target. He does things that can be questionable, but yet they'll use him as the scapegoat. They'll use him as Judas to come and get every last one of us that has our very own opinions and views on subjects. Our very own opinions and views that we've researched, painstakingly put hours into. When we talk about stuff the Clintons have done, when we talk about the pharmaceutical companies, when we talk about the joke of a kangaroo court that the DOJ runs for the pharmaceutical for lawsuits against vaccines. Damn, I didn't know about that one. And to me, I personally see Alex Jones as a real danger, and I've stated this in previous videos. He's more of a cult leader. I see him just as dangerous as David Koresh and whatever the guy's name was with the Georgetown stuff, because that's how people adhere and listen to him, hang on every word. Well, it's still in his archives. Go look for the video where he talked about if things ever did hit the fan, he's taking his family and going south. That's where you're putting your faith in. That's who you're following. Person that's going to turn tail and take his family and run across the border? I think not. But yet, that's the problem. We get caught up in the shiny stuff. Hence my little favorite saying of recent: all things glitter is not gold. They're usually meant to distract, mislead you, draw you down areas that will keep you away from seeing what's going on. It's not hard to research for yourself. Just open up your Twitter page. Watch how many people retweet the same thing. Usually the same things are trending. Now, go try to find one of my podcasts that, if you follow me, that I shared the link to Twitter. You won't even see it because it's buried between all the retweets and the trending stuff. Go try to find Dabu's recent uploads that's shared to Twitter. You don't see it. That's why I don't tell you guys, if I'm going to update something, it'll be right here under the video. Yep, I agree. And I know this for a fact: some of the older founding families that are no longer in politics are getting a bit tired of the crap. I think you found me through either Pam or Rufacast. I think. I think that's where we connected at. Pretty sure it was one there, or might have been Be Rich. I don't remember. I mean, I've gained so many followers this year, which has been a blessing and surprising, considering I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea, especially on some of the topics I talk about. I mean, Dabu does some great stuff. I respect what he does. Sometimes I might not agree with some of the tactics, but there's a time and place for everything, and he's keeping it real, and that much I have to respect. He's bringing it out there for all of you. I'm more laid back on certain things and try to pick the right times and places to bring certain discussions and certain topics. Well, me, the people's perspective, you are a true treasure and a true gem. I've I'm glad I found your channel. And I believe it or not, I think I found you through Dabu or Be Rich. I can't remember which one, but it was one of them. You know, but I think most people by now, because I keep my subscription feed open for everybody to see. I follow everyone, just not people on the truth community, but through all walks of life. Everybody has an opinion and a view, and it's important to be able to listen to everybody's. Everybody has a story. Everybody has something to impart, and it's important that we listen. Don't have to agree with it, but listen and question. Because I haven't walked in your shoes, and thankfully you guys haven't walked in my shoes. Because my shoes has been a very long path, and it's had plenty of dark times. I just don't talk about it. But those that do know me, like Rob and a few others, they know what I used to be and what I am today. And it's because I've, experienced things and had a lot of great people in my life. Even though sometimes I didn't want to hear what they had to say. It took me a long time to realize, I got to sit back and listen. I mean, Obama tricked everyone. It was easy to. Me and Rob's discussed that a lot. That, you know, he had it going for him. The first, I don't know if we want to call him African American, but first African American to become a president. It was about time. It was about time we put that racism finally to bed. And that sold to a lot of people, resonated to a lot of people. And he had a great mouthpiece, I've got to admit. But after his first term, I don't know how he got reelected. Oh, wait, I know how he got reelected because who he ran up against. Well, that's where we get our wisdom from. It's our experiences. We can have all the knowledge in the world. That knowledge is is just that. It's not experienced. We haven't experimented with that knowledge yet. We haven't got burnt or seen that, hey, that don't burn. It worked. Which is, that's some of the problem with, what was discussing earlier about the transgenderism stuff. They're teaching it at such a young age to where they shouldn't be taught. I mean, I'll state this again, the human brain is not fully developed to the age of 25. No, it takes all three. And with wisdom comes great responsibility because now you have all that responsibility of the things you've learned. You have the responsibility not to abuse those things. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of him. And truthfully, I seen Rodney as another Ross Perot. Because the fact is, if he would have talked about certain things instead of saying, I have a plan, and just saying, I have a plan, if he would have unveiled those plans, he might have got elected. But no, he just kept saying, I have a plan, but couldn't show nobody his plan. And, as with all things, systems are rigged as much as, yes, it is the responsibility of choice. Just like as we vote, we have a responsibility not to vote based on left and right paradigms. We have a responsibility to vote for the person that's going to respect, uphold, and protect and defend our Constitution. but we've gotten away from that. We've got to where it's got to be this party, it's got to be this party. People say, oh, just like this whole election rigging debacle, the Russians did it. Well, what about mainstream media? How long have they controlled the narrative by saying you must have this percentage to be able to take part in the debates? Well, we've seen what happens with that when Ron Paul made that percentage. They raised the percentage so he wouldn't be able to be on the stage and take part of the debates. That's influencing the election. When you say that these candidates don't matter because they don't have the percent, well, they might get the percent if they can get their voices heard. That's the responsibility of the network, of the media. Supposed to be, but it's not. Because, as we know, with all these mainstream medias, including Fox, they're all politically aligned. They don't sway from their political basis. Yes, they are. People are definitely voting like this is a football game. And we got our bookies and numbers guys playing the numbers, manipulating it. And people don't get it. They can't see it. Because we get caught up in, oh, this person believes this, this, this. So that's wrong. Much like we're seeing today, we're seeing that division. We're seeing our youth that lacking the morals of simple birth certificate, male, female. Oh no, it's gender neutral now or gender free. I mean, I can't stand to even listen to any of the major news networks. It has gotten to that point. I'd much rather come on here and listen to Me the People's Perspective, Dabu, Be Rich, Reality Check 123, and the various other people I follow. I'd much rather spend the time and do my own research. And do I share all the research I do? No. Some of it's just for my personal stuff. Not everything's meant to be shared. Maybe it's because I don't have a complete opinion of it yet. Or maybe because I think it's not time. Yeah, that wouldn't fly here either. But yet, that shouldn't even be on a birth certificate. It should only be male or female. There should be no question about that. Can't change your DNA. And that's what makes you either or. Either you have an extra Y chromosome or you don't. Basic science. But then again, according to some people, basic math is I was born in the 2010s and this is 2018, so therefore I'm 18. Yeah, I don't get that one. But they say that's basic math. Basic logic. Simple math. When the simplicity of it is you're 8. Go re-educate yourself. But I can see why they want to push that narrative in this day of age. Because then, by that logic, 8 years old is consensual because they're 18. By that math, which I find sickening in itself. I mean, it's just like the whole Boy Scout thing. And it pains me to talk about that because, I went through Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Eagle Scouts. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot what it means to be a man, what it means to have morals, respect. And what they did It violates all those principles. Just like I had great respect for the Girl Scouts because it taught young women how to be young girls, young adults, and young women. It prepared them to be leaders in their communities, leaders in work. But yet, me the peaceful perspective, you bring up a very good point. I know I have a lot of gay friends, and most of them they think this transgender movement is sick and disrespectful, and it's not they firmly believe it's not what the LGBT community stood for, and which we all know it's not what the LGBT community is now, because the narrative's changed. Now they're trying to protect pedophiles. And I'm sorry, the gay people I know, the homosexuals that I know, the ones that I had no problem supporting their LGBT cause, they even left the cause because it isn't what it was meant to be. They allowed people to come in and change the narrative. Most of them don't even agree with transgender universal bathrooms. But yet, we can't talk about that. If we bring them on to talk about that, it gets censored because it goes against the status quo. They are? I didn't know that. But yet, it doesn't surprise me because I see it in every community. I see how the narratives change. It's like I watched the alt right come up. You know, it started out as a good thing, but look at it now. It's splintered into how many different factions? Why? Because they didn't vet the people they allowed in. They didn't question the people they allowed in. They let people like Invictus Augustus come in, who was all about what's the term I'm looking for? Um, Eugenics. That's the word. But yet they never questioned that. Then they wanted to once again throw the ugly race problem in when we're living in a day and age. It should never be about race. It shouldn't be about skin color, ethnicity. It should be about the fact that we're all Americans. We're all brothers and sisters. Right. Well, here's a crazy thing. Let's look at BLM, Black Lives Matter movement. You know, the screwed up thing about this movement is I see more white people than I do blacks during the protest marching under Black Lives Matter. But you talk about that, you must be a racist bigot. The ancient Romans, kinda, but yet we find that, there was actually a black Caesar. I was kind of shocked to come across that. The Roman culture was, or at least, the higher ups, the Senate or the citizens, they were a mixture of different races, different cultures, but they were much like, you know, we talk about slavery here, we talk about plantations owners and stuff, but yet the first plantation owner here in the United States was a black man. It wasn't a white man, it was a black man. And we've seen that within the Roman era. We've seen the mixing of cultures because that's what happens when you conquer nations. You start taking the top of the crop, so to speak, the elite of the crop, and bringing them into your circles. I mean, up until Constantine, there was no Christianity in Rome. Those that practiced Christianity were considered barbaric and treated severely. But Constantine, who was a pagan, didn't want the violence. He didn't want the chaos that was happening in his city. So therefore, he acknowledged Christianity as a religion within the Roman Empire to end the chaos and the infighting and the wars. Yes, they did. Alexander, every nation he conquered, he not only did he tell his generals to take wives, but he also gave the people a standing position. Those that, he thought he could trust and manipulate to give them that sense of power. You know, people need to, that's why I said, we can't lose our history. And we're seeing that happen today here in our own, very own culture. I mean, we've got Native Americans that we're down to maybe, I think it's like now to be recognized as a Native American, like it's like 5% bloodline can be recognized because the Native American culture and the people have almost gone extinct. But yet we have stories from the Native Americans, such as the war between the Native Americans and the giants, the Nephilim, that most people don't even know about. But yet it's still within their culture, still passed down from generation to generation. And see, that's very. I love that last two videos you did, me the people's perspective, because there's a lot of things that people fail to realize, and that is a lot of cultures, no matter what, we see a tie back to Egypt. We see the ties, even in some scholars' beliefs. I think it's even quoted in the Bible. I'm not quite sure, so don't quote me on that one. But even Jesus went into Egypt. Egypt used to be, from what I've researched and found throughout history, used to be the Mecca, the teaching area, where all teaching was taught. Most we lose that aspect of the history because we think of it was the Grecian scholars. We take a lot of our culture, subcultures, and stuff from the Grecian scholars, but yet it was the Grecians who learned from the Egyptians, who translated some of the Egyptian text into the Greek language. Yes, like Caesar's Egyptocracy was crucified at his funeral. And most people don't realize to this day, archaeologists have never found a cross that's upright. They've only found what some people call the St. Andrew's cross, the X. In all the digging, that's the only form of a cross they've ever found is the St. Andrew's cross, the X. Just like we get into the terms such as heretic, heathen, pagan. Nobody takes time to go back to the root origins of words and what was first originated in the first usage of it. Well, I'm not that typical everybody. I like doing that stuff sometimes because it has meaning. Because every time you translate something, you start losing meaning. Every time you add a definition, you begin to lose meaning of the original origin of the word. What they originally meant was truth sayer or free thinker, the common folk, those that would question. You know what is still bugging me, and I haven't quite figured out, is this Harad character. That is an interesting character. And I've read some scholars in the academic area and field that say Harad was never a real person. And I've read where some say that he was. I've also read where they say Harad was an Egyptian or an Edomite of lineage. You know, and that's I think where we get. Yeah, I know. Oh boy, do I know. I know there's certain people in this very community does not like me just because of my beliefs and are quick to say that I'm evil. But yet, I wasn't brought up that way. I was brought up to question everything, to view everything, to listen. You know, here's my theory when it comes to the dirty word religion. You strip the dogma out of it, there's a lot of truth, a lot of good morals, a lot of good values. There's a lot of history there and knowledge, but it's just not in one religion. It's in all the religions. Everyone has a piece of the puzzle. And that's why they use the dogma to divide us, to keep us from those other pieces of the puzzle. Just like there's Tibetan monks who understood and knew the power of vibration, to where they can move boulders just by using those long trumpets, creating that sound waves that resonate, that would levitate the boulders. It's actually documented, guys. Funny the things you learn over the years. But you don't learn those things if you can't keep an open mind. You can't learn those things if you judge everybody and fall into that loophole of left and right, that it can only be one or the other, or that everybody's evil because they don't follow your belief system or practice. You know, and I got a lot of respect for a lot of Christians out there. Casey, Enter the Stars, love his work. Do I always agree with it? No. But he's got that piece of the puzzle. But could he sit back and listen to the pieces of the puzzle that I have? I don't know. We all have a piece of the puzzle. That's why it's so important for these elites, these boogeymans that we want to label, to create this division. The Catholic Church understood it. That's why they coined the term heretic, heathen, pagan. Burn the witches at the stake, burn the heretics at the stake. Why? Because they were free thinkers. They were the common folk. They were the very people that's going to question their dogma. They're the very people that's going to question the very concepts. That's why it's so important not to lose our identity, our self-identity. Because our self-identity wants to question things that we know that seem skeptical, that seem untrue. That's why they push these issues that they've been pushing. That's why they push the transgenderism. That's why they push diversity, which anybody that studies English, that knows what the word, when you create a word what div means, it means to divide. It does not mean equality at all. But yet they spin it and try to teach you that it means equality. And boy, do I talk on my hands a lot. it comes to a point that we have to break the programming, break the cycle. Greetings, Mr. Anderson. We have to understand that we have to question everything. And for some, that's hard, especially when you start questioning the things that you've been taught when it comes to religion. But you have to have the open mind that you know, there's more than just one piece of the puzzle. You got to realize they used the dogma in it to divide us, to keep us from seeing those things. Just like I was astounded to learn, and it took me sitting down with an older Native American that was a part of the Tecumseh tribe to learn the stories that was passed down from generation to generation about the war that they fought before we were ever here on the soil, before the Vikings ever stepped foot on the soil. The war they fought with the Nephilim and the giants. I've seen some, was able to archive and unearth some pictures of a certain place here in the United States that are kind of like flat top pyramids that have old writing that they just said it was old hieroglyphic writing. I got to looking at the writing and I instantly recognized it as ancient Hebrew. But then again, most people don't know there's an old form of Hebrew. The old form of the Hebrew does not have the shin in it, and a few other things. But that teachings, the knowledge came from elsewhere. It didn't come from the Jewish faith. It didn't come from other faith. It came from other areas that still use the old forms of Hebrew. Yeah, I got an interesting crackpot theory about Sasquatches. It's a theory. Why not? Could they be the giants, the Nephilim? It makes sense. I believe they're highly intelligent. But I also believe that, like all things on this earth, things adapt, change, and evolve. So we could be talking about the mailman, as far as we know right now. We've seen how bloodlines work. We've seen how generations change from generations. So we see, for some odd reason, it's so important now to have your ancestry chronicalized, DNA tests done. Why is that? Yes, an old race. And I was shocked Friday to actually sit down, because I'm not big in the UFO field. But I was shocked to sit down and listen to the guest on Pirate Radio podcast last Friday, Nathaniel. Nathaniel, can't remember his last name, but he had a different perspective on things that I was able to relate to from the stuff that I've studied and been a part of. I could see the correlation. Of course, I've always had the theory, what are UFOs, but maybe Nephilim, angels, demons, whatnot, because it's all unknown. I don't much look. Yeah, I see. I have not looked into mine, mainly because I know pretty much, well, from the old method of doing things by book, by writings, journals. We've traced our genealogy clear till we had a Von in our last name. We've also traced our genealogy to founding father and a signer of the Constitution, clear down to its Germanic and Irish roots. No DNA testing required for that. Thank you very much. But it's the oddity. Why the push now for all that? One questions. Well, we know we're getting into a day and age where biometrics is so important. You know, goes back to what I said. We can't change our DNA. Our DNA is our marker. It is our identifier. It is what we are and who we are. I mean, no one else has the same DNA as us as an individual. Each of our DNA is unique. Even though we have certain patterns from our family, from our parents, but it's not the same DNA. And we start getting talking about DNA, bloodlines, and stuff. There's a reason why if we go back through history, and we're seeing that push once more. And I'm glad we got somehow managed to chaotically get onto this subject because it reminds me of something. It reminds me from the medieval times how certain families intermarried. And it goes clear back to the Egyptian times to where they would intermarry within the family to keep the bloodlines pure, only occasionally marrying outside the family to strengthen the bloodline. We also know throughout history that the age of consent used to be when both male and female became reproductive, when they went through puberty. Even though, even with their kings and queens, they were not considered able to rule without a regent until they were an adult. But once they were able to breed, they were allowed to marry or be married. Oh, I fully agree on that aspect there because it's been pretty much, well, this was one of my points before I left the Christianity was this. Those that can There will be those among you that will be able to prophesy and see. They'll have abilities. But yet the very church condemns anybody with an ability, anybody that can see those things. They've taught that that's evil. They've taught themselves to not even see that time. That there might be a book you actually might like, Me, the People's Perspective. It's called Jesus, the Last of the Pharaohs. I can't remember who it's by, but I'm pretty sure there's only one book by it, by that title. But it is an interesting read. And it gets in just more than just that. It also gets into obelisk and stuff like that. It's interesting. It also gets into some of the bloodlines and stuff. Good point. You know, it's the time and age. And, I'm not much on watching movies anymore, but I kind of wanted to see the Real Player One. And, I know people are going to pick this thing apart because of the cult stuff in it and all the symbolisms and stuff. And they're going to miss something. Jesus, Last of the Pharaohs. Here, let me type that in. Wow, spell it right first. You know, actually, let me just. I've got it, but I think it's on my other hard drive that's not plugged in. Oh, it never fails. Okay, there we go. That's who it's by. I'm gonna double check to make sure though. I've got this somewhere in PDF. If I find my PDF, yeah, that's it. If I find it on, if I find it on my PDF version, I'll upload it to WordPress. Oh wait, I might have to upload that to Patreon. I don't know if I can upload it to WordPress because I don't have the paid version. Drawback to doing things for free, using free stuff comes with restrictions and limitations. But it is interesting when we get into that debate and talking about those things that we're seeing history repeat itself. This whole pedophilia agenda, lowering the age of consent, it's going back to the medieval times. Instead of progressing in history and evolving, we're starting to go backwards, and we're never supposed to degress and regress. We're supposed to evolve. Just like, we can always point the finger at people. We give them colorful names, elites, secret societies, globalists. But who's pulling their strings? I've always asked that question because, to me, these are just puppets. Yeah, I think we should be planet hopping by now. The technology's there, it's been there. You got to ask yourself, maybe it is. Maybe we still have the giants of the world and the Nephilim, or the children of the giants and Nephilim. Maybe they're the true ones that are in power, pulling everybody's string. Something, call me a conspiracy theorist, call me a nut, crazy, but it does make sense when you start studying things, when you start opening your mind to other things, and start putting the pieces of this huge puzzle together that's scattered throughout every culture, every belief, even some that are lost. We have lost cultures out there to this day. How much of that knowledge has been lost? Something I do agree with Dabu. All right, thanks, Mr. A. I think he brought out a very good point. If they ever find the halls of Alexander, we'll never know about it. Or the Great Library of Alexander. Because it's, if you believe the stories and the myths, the legends of it, it has all the history up to that point. How much of that history would contradict the things that we think we perceive and know today? You see, knowledge is dangerous. It's even more so dangerous when it gets into the hands that want to use it and abuse it to manipulate people. I mean, I believe that all knowledge should be shared freely, But there's also a responsibility to that. You just can't give it to any old buddy without an instruction manual, like we've seen happen with a few things. Where they just gave everybody a black scrying mirror to have at it. They gave everybody a doorway, gateway, whatever you want to call it, and people don't even realize it, except for those that have that teaching and knowledge and understanding. It's all about having an open mind. Listen, and the most important thing is, guys, you got to listen to your inner self. That I believe fully. It's our inner self, that inner voice inside us. I believe that is always in direct communication with God. Whatever name you choose to call your God. It's an older teaching from an older belief system, but they believed that that inner voice was the voice of God inside you. It was your soul always in communion with God. I like to believe that as to be true. I've seen how it is when you don't suppress it, when you don't ignore it. But yeah, boy, did we get on a tangent. There was something I was going to talk about. Oh, yes. In closing, because I've rambled on way too long, considering I got another podcast to do in almost an hour from now. The Ready Player One. I know how people are going to pick it apart and miss something that was very important that was said at the end. The very end of the movie, the guy tells the kid, the most important thing that people have forgotten is reality. The real reality that's out there. They've forgotten how to live in reality, to cherish the things that are in front of you. And I'm not saying when I say in front of you is the computer screen, your cell phone, your iPad, or whatever you're using to listen to me. I'm talking about the people, everyday people, nature, everyday things. The real reality is what is in front of you, the things you can touch. Yeah, Pirate Radio Network. I meant to only do this for an hour, and I really got rambling on. It was funny that once more Steven Spielberg points out, even though we're living in a digital age, granted the movie was about VR, virtual reality, but yet he took the time to point out that we need to step aside from the virtual reality, the digital, and can reconnect with reality because it's so important. And it is. I mean, you hear me talk about information overload, and you hear me talking about things that we take in that we don't even realize we're taking in. There's been a lot of good videos I've come across of late. I think his name's Prince E or E, but he put out a video just a couple weeks ago talking about the people we let into our lives, let into our circles, who we call friends, the impact that they have. I know that from an esoteric occult perspective, because it's something we are taught. We're taught those things about how much power and influence people have that we allow in. When we let somebody in, when we call them a friend or an acquaintance, The spiritual aspect doesn't recognize those definitions. The only thing it recognizes is that we let them in. Okay, I'll let him know. I should be hearing from him in probably about an hour. In fact, let me copy that down so I don't forget. And that's the perfect place to put it, right in my notes for tonight. You know, people do have an impact on our lives. A big impact, regardless, that's what people don't get. We start letting negative people in, we're going to start feeling that negativity in our lives. We might not first right off recognize it, but it goes back to it's all boils down, it's all about frequency and vibrations. We're all connected. We all have every energy conceivable in this whole universe is a part of us that builds is what we're built of. And when we start allowing one to have too much rain, it throws us out of whack, so to speak. It has a very negative effect on us. So be careful who you let in. I know I've gotten away from it because I had to, doing the things that I've been doing for the past several years. Because you have to network, you have to let people in, and sometimes you're letting the wrong ones in, and you might not even know of it. Because think about it, it's all about numbers anymore. How many friends do I have on Facebook? How many followers do I have on Twitter? I ask you this, how many of those, since those numbers are so great to you, how many of those do you actually conversate with, talk to, get to know? How many of those you might not want even in your life? That's something that's very important in this day of age, to realize that. I get it. To be able to get your messages out, to be able to social and interact, network with people, you have to let people in, but you also have to learn to create that line, that wall, that make that distinction. This is not a friend. This is an acquaintance. There is a difference. You have to understand how to give that. Only friends and family have power, and acquaintances, business partners, and whatever other label you want to use has no power or influence in my life. But unfortunately, most people don't realize that, and most people will say, "Oh, you're talking about that. You must be evil." Now, as if I was, I wouldn't tell you what I just told you. Because there are bad people in this world. There's bad apples in every group and organization. But there's just as many, if not more, good people. They just might not share the same beliefs or ideas or opinions that you have, but they all want the same thing: a better life, a better humanity, a better world. They don't want to see this sick crap that we had to talk about tonight. They don't want to see the corruption in any of this. There's unity to be found, but we have to learn to not judge. We got to learn to listen to our inner selves and allow the right people in. When we start doing that, and we start casting out the bad apples, and not the whole group, then we'll start finding true unity. Then we'll start being able to bring about real change. Sorry I rambled on for so long, guys. Was not my intentions. Conversation was good. Even in the chat was awesome. That's kind of my favorite thing about being a small channel, is the ability to interact in the chat room. Interact with and learn from you guys. To me, that's the reward in doing this. Learning from you and hoping that you're learning from me. And sharing the experiences that we see, we live, making us question some of the things that we might not have thought about or didn't realize. So, I wish you guys all a good week, and once more remind everyone that's made it thus far, I will be joining Jaffe on Pirate Radio Podcast, episode 17 for the Muck Around News Hour. And I hope to see you guys all there. It'll be 11 p.m. Eastern Time, guys. And that's where you can find me next. And I don't know how many videos I'm going to be doing this week. I've got a few things I want to work on. A few other projects that I need to kind of get started. So video for Sons and Daughters of Liberty might not be. This might be the only one for the week, as I'm prioritizing a few things and getting a few other things set up. So next couple weeks it might be hit or miss. Plus I am also dealing with a very sore throat, which was why I had no intentions of going on for longer than an hour. So I'm going to end this, go make a cup of hot tea and honey, and take a throat lozenge so I will have a voice for the next podcast. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. You guys all have a good night.